English translation, 159th contact. Sunday, 10th January, 1982, 01:58 hours.
This is but a surprise. You are probably Electra?
Certainly, this is me, and I am very glad to be able to greet you at last.
And just like you, I am also glad. Ever since I held you in my thoughts during the transmissions of the names, I have been wondering about you. You take second place to your sister Manara, however, in nothing at all.
That should be an honor for you, Electra, when he speaks to you in such a manner. It is his own kind of expressing his admiration, but knowing him, there will be more.
You bring the Bronze Rose into a quandary, you twit.
What did I say? It is still complimentary.
I think the comparison is very lovely.
And with that, you are fond of him, of course, but it was not expected to be any different. Anyway, I am very glad about that.
To each his own, my son.
That is of correctness.
Exactly. But you, Electra, be cordially welcome to the planet of the barbarians. It is often quite funny here, even though sometimes everything goes wrong. But in any case, it is livable here.
I have already learned various things in this regard. The human beings of this world seem to be extremely illogical in a lot of things, thus they also think and act accordingly.
About that, I could sing you a few arias.
The meaning of his speech is that he could tell you many things about the illogic of the Earth humans.
I see.
The descriptive phrases of the Earth humans are very different from ours, as I already explained to you. So if certain things become explained, then the descriptive phrases consist of other forms than the ones known to us. I will still instructively teach you about the most common phrases in the near future. We also had our own troubles with this at the beginning of our contacts.
That is interesting.
You will learn it all right, you chocolate angel.
Again, I do not understand.
Chocolate is an earthly confectionery, which is primarily made out of milk, cocoa, and sugar, and which also has a brown color. Therefore, with respect to the color, the Earth humans compare different things to it, whereby it is said that something is chocolate brown. Therefore, the speech of our friend says that you are an angel of chocolate brown color.
I must first accustom myself to these phrases, but I also think this descriptive phrase is lovely.
You have to, yes, because sweet suits sweet.
Unfortunately, I do not understand the sense again.
When something is lovely, such as you, my child, then we call this, among other things, also sweet. So you are a sweet thing, just like chocolate.
Now I understand.
You see, now I do not have to get you a bicycle.
You bring Electra into a quandary.
But what does that mean now?
If a human being does not understand something, so on the Earth, then the explanation given for this is that his thinking is too slow. Now, if one puts these thoughts on a vehicle so that they can move ahead faster, then they are able to work faster and achieve their goal, through which then the understanding appears. For this reason, it is said that a bicycle should be used for better and faster understanding. A bicycle is
A bone shaker or pedal trampler.
yes, so these peculiar vehicles are also called, along with many other names. Anyhow, a bicycle is a vehicle that has a metal frame, and on the back and front each, a large wheel is mounted. On the rear part of the frame, there is a small seat, on which the human being sits then, and he puts his feet at the bottom center of the frame on two rotary joints. which he turns with his leg and foot muscles in the direction of travel, by which means the extremely dangerous vehicle moves, which the human being steers by means of a handlebar that is firmly fixed above the front wheel in the frame.
Man, you are indeed a wonder of the bicycle description. I would not have come up with such a perfect description. But that the bicycle should be such a damn dangerous vehicle, that is probably somewhat exaggerated, my son.
Nevertheless, from our perspective, it is.
Certainly for you non-experts. But let us leave this, as such speeches accomplish nothing. I have a question about the names that Electra transmitted to me.
We should still talk about that in any case.
Then it is indeed good. You see, Electra, we send our thoughts back and forth daily. You do not yet master our language so thoroughly that you can immediately understand the right terms for each name. This is why we must mentally converse very strenuously, in order to find the right meanings. But for me, this is tremendously strenuous, which is why I already have an unusually large headache after 2 hours in each case. Hence, I would be very happy if you would give me a break from time to time, so that I can recover a bit. I am certainly not just soft, but the strains are really very great.
I also wanted to talk with you about that because for me, it is all very strenuous and strength demanding. My head also hurts very strongly every time, and that after only a short time. None of us are used to such overloads. For my part, I only cooperated in this strength-demanding wise because I adapted myself into your working speed. It is my wish that you work in a slower manner.
That is of correctness, for the overload becomes too great. As you know, I once calculated for you that 1 hour of such work is equivalent to an output that normally comprises about 20 normal working hours, whereby the average is still somewhat higher than that. Now, if you both work together in this form for 7 to 8 hours a day, then there results a daily work performance of 140 to 160 normal working hours each. This is, however, an achievement that is monstrous and inhuman, but which also cannot be answered for, neither by you nor by Electra. Even though you call an earthly body your own, which is very powerful as we know very well, it also needs many powers. But Electra's body also relies on the powers, even more than yours, because it is more sensitive. You both have powers of a material consciousness-related form of approximately the same proportion, through which you can overload your bodies to a certain extent. Nevertheless, you are not able to do this for a longer duration because your bodies would be injured. With you, like with Electra, I have seen that you were daily at the end of your strength when you finished working. For this reason, I am giving you the advice that in the future you only work together in this manner for 5 hours a day, whereby you also limit the pace of work and often include breaks in the work. Even so, you still have to take all sorts of overloads upon yourself, for even in this manner, you still daily achieve 100 normal working hours each.
But that would mean that we could work through no more than 200 names a day.
That is indeed of correctness.
Man, then this will take a while, and at the same time, I still have several other books to write.
I know that. Nevertheless, everything has no sense if you forcibly destroy yourselves.
Then the other books just have to rest and wait.
So it will be.
Good, then we will just continue slowly. Do you also think so, Electra?
I am glad about that because for me, it really was unusually strenuous and painful.
If you are satisfied with that, then I am happy. It really was strenuous and painful, even if the human beings of the earth presumably cannot understand that.
I do not understand that again?
They still think that thought transmissions of any kind would require little or no powers at all, and that all this is practically child's play.
As long as they have not built up these abilities and powers within themselves and are not able to apply them, they will not be able to understand and grasp these issues.
So it also seems to me, especially since there are so many frauds in this area, who claim that they would have these abilities. But let's also leave this subject because I still have a question that I consider to be more important. Recently, we talked about Roland, and with this, you told me that you would clarify the matters surrounding him.
I have done this, but obviously you have thought about this in depth. It would therefore be interesting to hear what results you have obtained.
I actually did not want to talk about it because I would not like to get in the nettles, get into hot water, so to speak, with such things.
That you will not.
I do not understand. What should this phrase mean?
Get in the nettles?
Yes.
Get in the nettles, or burn our fingers, or step in the dirt, is what we say when we do or say something that could bring us harm.
But what are nettles?
Stinging nettles, my child.
What are those?
Nettles, or stinging nettles, are herbs with tiny stiff hairs on the leaves. Upon contact, the tips of these dagger-like or needle-like fine hairs break off, burrow into the skin, and empty their toxic sap under the skin. This then causes swelling and an itch-like burning. The nettle is a herb that has an affinity with the so-called China grass, and the nettle also finds use as a medicinal herb.
Yes, this herb is known to me. We call it urtic, which transferred into your language means that which stings and burns.
That is of correctness.
Now I understand the meaning of your phrase correctly.
I find that gratifying.
But now, tell me what results you have obtained.
If you wish, it is all indeed not nice. Very well. As I already explained to you once, something is not quite right in Roland's brain. It is clear that a crack is present. But he uses this in order to not make a real effort to deal with reality. That is to say that he can be tempted by his damage in the brain to be mentally lazy, as this damage just tends toward that. It means that this brain damage is tendentiously burdened with a mental laziness and causes a mental dullness. Where this damage comes from, I do not know, but it could be remedied by Roland if he would willfully pull himself together and concentratively strive to think properly and act properly. However, he allows himself to be overrun by this latent tendency towards dullness of thought and thus takes the path of least resistance. But this inevitably leads to the fact that the tendency of thinking dullness and thinking laziness becoming more and more pronounced, whereby he thus falls more and more into the position of falling into thinking dullness and thinking laziness more and more, and finally, even totally. This means that the longer he does not make a concentrated effort to think truly, the more he falls prey to dullness and laziness. Through this, however, the last remaining will that is still in him also dwindles away, through which he, in turn, illogically goes crazy. But furthermore, this also means that his brain begins to shrink, by which means a stupefaction ultimately makes its appearance. As I see this now, this process has already begun, for a degree of stupidity is already evident. With this, however, the point is also reached, where his little remaining reason is no longer accessible, which will mean that sooner or later he will go crazy and act crazy. This, in turn, means that one can no longer talk with him, as he acquires senseless irrationality, which arises from an inability to rationalize on his part. From this, it further arises, and indeed with certainty, that an irrational stubbornness will be the result, according to which every good and kind word given to help him will be useless. However, it will have already come this far within the next few days, even though I recently tried several times to bring him back to the right spot. But he defended himself against this with all means. This, however, will have the consequence that in the next few days, he will indulge in his senselessness even further, through which in 10 to 12 days at the latest, the bang must come. And I don't see how this bang could still be prevented. The only way that he could begin to think again is that he becomes placed under an antipsychotic medication treatment, through which, together with a suitable therapy, the wrong chemical mixtures in his brain become calmed, by which means his will, in turn, breaks through a little more and can be brought to application by him. Otherwise, I see no other possibility for him. But this would mean that only a mental hospital would be his deliverance, if he becomes admitted to such in the near future. Namely, unreal damages are already recognizable, which have resulted from the stubborn unwillingness to use the brain for concentrative thinking. In this respect, I have already done some calculations on what is happening around him, and have come to the conclusion that if he spins out and escapes from my reach, he will fall into a state of complete insanity within a few hours, which is mixed with megalomania and violence. But this will, in turn, have the result that another tendency caused by everything will break through, namely an uncontrolled and uncontrollable malignancy, which means that he can actually become violent in any bad form. Thus, it could be very easy for him to attack and injure people, if nothing worse happens. So it will take a maximum of 3 days before he is finally ready for a nut house. In 3 days at the latest, the police will have to take him into custody, after which he will be sent to a cuckoo home. These are the fixed results of my calculations.
Your results correspond to the complete correctness. Have you also calculated something on the precise time data, when all this will be?
No.
I have done that, but that is not so important. Simply do your duty and speak thoroughly with him again. Also bluntly explain to him what awaits him if he does not immediately mobilize his forces and stop all evil. Nevertheless, nothing can be changed anymore, for he has already determined the path ahead. Even before the month of January is over, he will find himself admitted into an institution, which you call a loony bin.
Talking with him is therefore completely pointless, as I already thought myself. But nevertheless, I will do it, as I have also done this several times in the last few days. But I can tell you, my friend, that it is not exactly nice to have to do something out of pure obligation, of which one knows that it is pointless. It requires all sorts of powers of the nerves, not to mention the lousy feelings and the waves of thoughts that makes one feel like hell.
That is of correctness. And the particular evil is still the fact that you have to live among Earth humans, who can neither understand these things nor grasp them, and who are only too easily determined to make you responsible for these things, due to hatred, jealousy, and ignorance, even though, on the contrary, you have tried everything to help Roland and to keep him from what is coming. I still remember very well how the group members tried to shut your mouth at that time, when it concerned his reception into the core group as well as his person and his work. But now, not one of those involved wants to know anything about that. As you all say so nicely on the earth, they wash their hands in innocence. But it has never escaped me that up to this hour, that not a single core group member has developed even the slightest knowledge of human nature, which is why all of them still allow themselves to be deceived when it comes to assessing human beings. You, however, you who can assess the human beings very well and in less than a second, are defamed and treated as stupid. But this will still avenge itself on the fallible ones, as their relevant time will come.
You live in this world as an outcast. It is a mystery to me how you keep this up and can still perform your work so intensively.
One gets used to it, little sister.
You are very sweet.
Now it starts again.
Your nature is just attractive.
It seems so, but that does not apply to everyone.
Those who are unable to cope with life, scheming, slanderous, truth-shy, envious, hateful, and other negative things, etc., yes, they are automatically hostile-minded toward you. They do not bear sincerity or sincere love, and to them even the truth is an evil abomination.
That is probably so. But tell me now about the names, how everything is with these. I mean, of what origin, etc. are they?
The names transmitted to you are exclusively those which have been in use among our peoples for ages, and which are still commonly used among our peoples today in a modified form. These names are first names according to an earthly sense, and each one has a certain meaning. The rule is that for a person who exercises some specific activity, this activity is then added as an explanation to the name. For example, if someone had worn TRJJ Don as a name and had pulled ships along the channels, then this human being was named TRJJ Don, who pulls the ships, or TRJJ Don, the ship puller. That's how the determinations of the names have arisen.
There are, however, still quite certain emphases of letters.
That is of correctness and very important, for only the emphasis of certain syllables results in the correct pronunciation of the name. But in this regard, I will be helping you with the name lists.
I have also noticed that various names are still common on the earth today, sometimes in well-preserved or partially preserved form.
That corresponds to the actual occurrences. Many of the names are still common on the earth today, some in exact, some in modified forms. Thus, on the one hand, the names were received in their entire value, whereby usually only the emphasis changed, but, on the other hand, names were changed by newly developed languages or simply by arbitrary willfulness. When these names were introduced on the earth, these were given in 8 different languages, which were, nevertheless, all of Lyran origin. From this, new languages developed on the earth over the course of millennia, from which then, primarily, the oldest languages known on earth arose, but these strongly flowed through from the original languages introduced. The best-known languages that arose from it are Sumerian, Aramaic, Hebrew, Minoan, Celtic, etc. From the Celtic, for example, there arose many other languages, from which, ultimately, today's German language, the Flemish, and also other languages arose. From the Minoans, ancient Greek arose, and so on and so forth. And in all these languages, of course, the anciently introduced names were common, which have been received or modified in the course of time. What is still most commonly available today in names is found in those areas of languages that run in the Minoan direction and which have been incorporated into the later ancient Greek, by which means they have been preserved to a large part up to this day, though often modified. Then, to all this, there still came names that were invented by the earth humans themselves, whereby any objects, actions, and work areas, etc., were used for the formation of names. But there were also names that came from the so-called original languages, which means that even then, names arose for human beings on the earth when the human beings of the earth first learned to speak. As a rule, these were very simple terms from which, in the course of time, additional terms arose, which then ultimately led to a language. But this was only so in a few cases, because the main part of the introduction of language on the earth happened when the first cosmonauts resided on this world, who mixed themselves with the earthly human life forms, who still were not strong in their own language. Nevertheless, this goes back a few million years. But I will tell you more about that some other time, because today I still have many other issues to discuss, and this will take several hours. These things, however, are not to be recorded in writing at a later date.
Then get going at once.
Still, I would first like to explain something about Roland, which I have found out. The damage in his brain is not of a natural kind, as you suppose. It is based on the fact that he suffered an accident as a boy as he ran into a motorcycle. This accident had the effect that through the concussion which his brain suffered, certain acid cell walls tore and slight mixtures with some bruises occurred. This then triggered exactly what you have explained in such detail. But the fact is that Roland could have become an absolute master over these disadvantages if he had concentratively and willingly striven for progressive thinking. But this was not in his mind because this was only focused on an effortless and strain-free life. Another accident occurred at a later date, after which the first after-effects still worsened.
It is good that you say that because Sissy, his mother, told me that I should ask you about it. But I would have now completely forgotten that. However, I think that nothing will change even through this, or...
Certainly not. But now, we should turn to those concerns which Electra and I still have to discuss with you.